How long can someone watch you before you notice? For Jada Williams, the answer was weeks. She was 23, a night shift nurse at County General Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. Every night, the same routine. Park on the 3rd floor, Section B, walk to the covered bridge, work 12 hours, leave at dawn. November 18th, 2014, felt like every other shift. She parked her white Honda at 9:47 p.m., waved to Jerome, the security guard, worked through the night, left at 6:04 a.m., exhausted, ready for sleep. But as she walked toward her car in that empty garage, something stopped her. Not a sound, not movement, just a feeling. Ancient, primal, the certainty that she wasn't alone. She stood there, scanning shadows, seeing nothing, shook it off, got in her car, drove home. 3 days later, Jerome called. "You need to come see something." And bring a friend. The security footage showed Jada walking to her car at dawn, showed her stopping, showed her scanning the empty garage, and there, at the absolute edge of the frame, barely visible in the stairwell shadows, was a figure. Human-shaped, motionless, positioned in the one spot where cameras couldn't fully capture them. The shadow had been there for weeks, 4 different nights, 4 different women leaving work alone. Always watched, always at the edges, always by someone who understood exactly how security systems work, where blind spots exist, how to observe without being seen. Then, police found the missing person report. Tasha Brooks, 27, vanished from a parking garage 3 blocks away. Same type of structure, same blind spots, same pattern. Last seen on camera, getting into her car, then stepping back out. Walking towards something off-screen. She never returned. Tell us in the comments, have you ever felt watched and seen nothing? Drop a like if this story hit different, because what happens next changed everything. Jada Williams wasn't supposed to be working that Tuesday night. She'd picked up an extra shift at County General Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, covering for another nurse who'd called in sick. The money was good, and Jada needed it. She was saving for a better apartment, something in a safer neighborhood than the subsidized complex where she'd grown up. Night shifts paid more, and despite the exhaustion, despite the way her body clock never quite adjusted, she'd learned to embrace the quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The hospital sat in the older part of downtown Richmond, surrounded by buildings that remembered better days. County General itself was a 7-story brick structure built in 1967, showing its age in peeling paint and outdated equipment, but still serving the community with the dedication of overworked staff like Jada. She'd been working there for 18 months since graduating from nursing school, an achievement that made her mother cry with pride. The parking garage was a separate structure, connected to the hospital by a covered walkway on the 2nd floor, but most staff parked on the 3rd or 4th levels, closer to the sky, farther from the street-level entrance that attracted occasional vandalism and break-ins. Jada always chose the 3rd floor, Section B, under one of the better-lit areas. She was careful. She'd been raised in a city where young Black women learned early to be aware, to trust their instincts, to never let their guard down completely. November in Richmond brought early darkness and cold winds that swept through the parking garage's open sides. That Tuesday evening, Jada had parked her 2007 Honda Accord at 9:47 p.m. Just as her shift was beginning, the garage was moderately full, about 60% capacity according to security logs. She'd waved to Jerome, the evening security guard, as she headed toward the covered walkway. Jerome Patterson was 62, a retired postal worker who'd taken the security job to supplement his pension. He'd known Jada since her first week at the hospital. "You be careful tonight, Miss Williams," he'd called after her. The same thing he said every shift, just Jerome being Jerome, protective of the younger staff, especially the women working nights. The shift itself was typical. 2 cardiac patients requiring close monitoring, 1 elderly woman recovering from pneumonia, 3 post-surgical cases. Jada moved through her rounds with practiced efficiency, her sneakers squeaking on linoleum floors, her scrubs bearing the coffee stain from the break room's ancient machine. She made small talk with patients who couldn't sleep, adjusted IV drips, documented vitals in careful handwriting that her supervisor praised as actually legible. At 11:34 p.m., she took her lunch break, 20 minutes in the staff room with a sandwich from home, and her phone turned to silent. She scrolled through social media, avoided the news, tried to preserve the mental energy needed for 5 more hours. Her best friend Keisha had texted earlier, "Girl, when are you getting a normal schedule?" Jada had replied with a tired emoji and a promise to call on her day off. The rest of the shift passed without incident. By midnight, the hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythm. Lights dimmed in patient rooms. Only emergency cases arriving through the ER entrance on the first floor. Jada finished her documentation at 5:52 a.m., gave report to the incoming day shift nurse, and gathered her belongings from her locker. She was exhausted. The kind of bone-deep tired that comes from standing for 8 hours, making life-or-death decisions while running on coffee and adrenaline. She took the elevator down to the parking garage at 6:03 a.m., according to the timestamp on the security footage. This is where the story really begins. The parking garage at dawn existed in a liminal space between night and day. Most of the overhead fluorescent lights remained on, casting that institutional yellow glow across concrete and metal. But through the open sides of the structure, the first hints of November sunrise were beginning to bleed into the darkness, that deep blue hour before true morning arrives. Jada stepped out of the elevator onto the 3rd floor, her bag slung over her shoulder, her mind already focused on the drive home and the sleep waiting for her. The garage was quieter than usual. Most night shift workers had already left. The 6 a.m. crew headed home. The 7 a.m. staff not yet arrived. Jada's footsteps echoed as she walked towards Section B, the sound bouncing off concrete pillars and low ceilings. Her car was where she'd left it, parked under one of the functioning lights, no other vehicles immediately adjacent. She was about 30 feet from her Honda when she stopped. Later, when investigators asked her to describe the moment, Jada would struggle to articulate it. There was no sound, no movement she could identify. Just a feeling, sudden and overwhelming, that the space around her had changed, that she wasn't alone. She stood there for perhaps 5 seconds, her hand instinctively moving to grip her bag strap tighter, her eyes scanning the shadows between parked cars. Nothing. No one visible. Just rows of vehicles and concrete pillars, stretching into dimness. Jada shook her head, annoyed at herself. She was tired, that's all. 12-hour shifts played tricks on your mind. She continued walking, reached her car, unlocked it with her key fob. The interior light came on, warm and reassuring. She climbed inside, locked the doors immediately, habit, and started the engine. The radio came on mid-song, some pop track she didn't recognize. She backed out of the space, navigated toward the exit ramp, and descended to street level. Jerome was still at his post in the small security office near the garage entrance. Jada waved as she passed, and he waved back, his night finally ending. She pulled onto the street, merged into the sparse early morning traffic, and drove the 15 minutes to her apartment without incident. Home felt safe. She locked her door, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto her couch without bothering to change out of her scrubs. Sleep found her quickly, dreamless and deep. She didn't think about the parking garage again until Friday morning. That's when Jerome called her. His voice on the phone was different, careful, like he was choosing his words deliberately. "Miss Williams, I need you to come down to the hospital when you can. Security office, it's probably nothing, but I think you should see something." Jada's shift didn't start until that evening. "Jerome, what's going on?" A pause. "Just come down when you get a chance, and maybe bring someone with you. A friend." The call ended with Jada staring at her phone. That same feeling from Tuesday morning creeping back. The sensation of being watched, of something wrong, just beyond her perception. She called Keisha, who agreed to meet her at the hospital at 2 p.m. Keisha worked at a call center downtown, could slip away on her break. They'd been friends since high school, and Keisha knew better than to ask too many questions when Jada's voice carried that particular edge of worry. The security office at County General was a cramped room behind the main lobby, filled with outdated monitors showing feeds from various cameras throughout the hospital and parking garage. Jerome was waiting for them, and he wasn't alone. Doug Winters, the head of hospital security, stood behind the desk, a former police officer who usually spent his days dealing with parking disputes and the occasional belligerent visitor. "Thanks for coming, Jada," Doug said. "Jerome showed me something on Tuesday night's footage, Wednesday morning, technically, and we need to ask if you noticed anything unusual." Jada's throat felt dry. "What do you mean?" Jerome gestured to one of the monitors. "Just watch. This is from camera 3. Third floor, section B, timestamp 6:04 a.m. The screen showed grainy, slightly overexposed footage of the parking garage. Jada recognized herself, a small figure walking across the frame toward her car. She watched herself stop, stand still for those few seconds, then continue to her vehicle. "I felt like someone was watching me," Jada said quietly, "but I didn't see anyone." "Keep watching," Jerome said. The footage continued. Jada getting into her car, backing out, driving away. The parking garage returned to stillness, empty except for the scattered vehicles and that institutional lighting. Then, Jerome rewound the tape, played it again. This time, he pointed to the right edge of the frame. That's when Jada saw it. The shadow. It wasn't much, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. At the far right edge of the camera's field of vision, where section B met the wall of the stairwell, something interrupted the consistent pattern of light and shadow, a darkness that didn't match the surrounding concrete. It appeared for just a few frames, perhaps 2 seconds total, and only when the camera angle and the lighting aligned in exactly the right way. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. "There," Jerome said, pausing the footage. "See that? Right there at the edge." Jada leaned closer to the monitor. The shape was humanoid, a vertical darkness, suggesting a person standing just outside the camera's primary viewing area, but it was the timing that made her stomach drop. The figure appeared in the frame at 6:03:47 a.m. Jada entered the frame at 6:04:12 a.m. 25 seconds later, the figure was already there, waiting. "Could be a shadow from something else," Doug Winters said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "The lighting in these garages creates optical illusions sometimes." "I went through the whole night's footage," Jerome interrupted. "That shadow appears 4 different times, always in the same spot, always at the edge of the frame, and always," he hesitated, "always when someone's about to walk through that section." Keisha, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "You're saying someone was hiding there, watching people?" "I'm saying I don't know what I'm saying," Jerome replied. "But I've been watching these cameras for 3 years, and I've never seen anything like this." Doug pulled up a chair. "Jada, I need you to think carefully. Tuesday night when you parked, did you see anyone in that area? Anyone who seemed out of place?" Jada shook her head. The garage was normal, maybe 60, 70 cars. I waved to Jerome, walked to the hospital. My shift was typical, nothing unusual. "And when you left?" Doug prompted. "You stopped walking. We saw it on the footage." "What made you stop?" This was harder to explain. Jada tried to find the words. "It was like the air changed. I know that sounds crazy, but it felt like when someone's standing behind you in a room and you haven't heard them or seen them, but you just know they're there. That feeling." Jerome nodded slowly. "Your instincts were telling you something your eyes couldn't confirm." "Can you show me the other times?" Jada asked. "The other times that shadow appears?" Jerome worked the controls, pulling up footage from different timestamps throughout Tuesday night. The first appearance was at 11:47 p.m. during Jada's lunch break. A different nurse, older white woman named Patricia, walked through Section B toward her car. The shadow appeared at the frame's edge for 3 seconds, then vanished. Patricia didn't stop walking, didn't seem to notice anything unusual. The second appearance, 2:33 a.m., a male doctor, someone Jada didn't recognize, walking toward the elevator. The shadow again, same position, same barely visible presence at the threshold of the camera's view. The third, 4:19 a.m., a janitor pushing a cleaning cart. The shadow lasting longer this time, almost 5 seconds before disappearing. And the fourth, Jada herself at 6:04 a.m. 4 different people, Keisha said, all different times. What's the pattern? They're all alone, Doug answered. Every person who walks through that section during those timestamps, they're isolated. No one else around them. Jada felt cold, despite the stuffy warmth of the security office. So someone was watching, choosing targets, waiting for people to be alone. We don't know that for certain, Doug said, but the concern in his voice was evident. Could be a homeless person using the stairwell for shelter. Could be hospital staff taking a break in an unauthorized area. Could be nothing. But you don't think it's nothing, Jada said. Doug sighed. No, I don't think it's nothing. That's why I'm filing a report with Richmond PD. We need to have someone check the stairwell, review more footage, see if we can get a better image of whoever this is. Jerome pulled up another screen. A different camera angle showing the stairwell door from the inside. I already checked. Camera 4 covers the stairwell entrance. But look at this. The footage showed the door at various times throughout Tuesday night. At no point did anyone enter or exit through that door during the hours when the shadow appeared. The door remained closed, undisturbed. That's impossible, Keisha said. If someone was standing there, they had to come through that door. Unless, Jerome said quietly, they were already there before the cameras were checked at shift change, or they knew exactly where the camera blind spots were. The room fell silent. Jada stared at the frozen image on the screen, that dark shape at the edge of visibility, positioned perfectly to watch without being seen. She thought about Tuesday night, walking through that garage at dawn, feeling observed but seeing nothing. The instinct that had made her stop, made her scan the shadows. Something had been there. Someone had been watching her. And according to the footage, they'd been watching others, too. The question forming in her mind was the same one she could see, reflected in Jerome's and Doug's faces. How many other nights? How many other people? And what had the watcher been waiting for? Detective Sarah Chen arrived at County General at 4 p.m. with a laptop and a skeptical expression. Despite the instruction not to use Chen, the investigating officer's name had been changed in the official reports Jada would later read. Detective Reeves, a 38-year-old woman with the tired eyes of someone who'd worked too many overnight cases, sat up in a conference room off the hospital's administrative wing. She'd been with Richmond PD's investigative unit for 12 years, specializing in stalking cases and public safety concerns. I've reviewed the footage, Reeves said as Jada, Keisha, Jerome, and Doug gathered around the table. And I've got to be honest, it's not much to work with. She pulled up enhanced versions of the security footage on her laptop. The images had been cleaned up, brightened, zoomed in on that section where the shadow appeared, but enhancement only revealed more ambiguity. The shape was definitely human-sized and human-shaped, but details remained obscured by distance, angle, and the garage's inconsistent lighting. Could be male, could be female, Reeves said. Height estimate puts them between 5'6" and 6 feet. That's a wide range. No visible clothing details, no distinguishing features. And here's the problem. We can't definitively prove this is a person at all. Defense attorneys would tear this apart. But you see it, Jada pressed. You see something there. I see an anomaly, Reeves corrected. Something that merits investigation. Which is why I've requested camera footage from the previous 2 weeks. If this individual has been using that location regularly, we might find clearer images from different angles or times. Jerome shifted in his seat. I should have noticed this sooner. I watch those feeds every night, and I never... Don't, Doug interrupted. "These cameras cover 12 different areas. You can't watch them all simultaneously. That's not on you." Reeves continued. "I need each of you to document your observations. Jada, you felt watched. I need dates and times of every instance you felt that way in or around this hospital. Jerome, review your logs for any unusual incidents in the parking garage over the past month. Security system glitches, door alarms, anything that seemed off." "There was something," Jerome said suddenly. "About 3 weeks ago, middle of October, camera 3, the same one that caught this footage. It went offline for maybe 6 hours. Maintenance said it was a loose connection in the mounting bracket." Reeves made a note. "Coincidence? Maybe, but now I'm wondering if someone tampered with it, figured out its field of vision, learned where the blind spots were." Keisha, who'd been listening intently, spoke up. "If this person has been watching for weeks, learning patterns, what were they planning? Why watch without doing anything?" The question hung in the air. It was the same thing that had been bothering Jada since she first saw the footage. The shadow didn't approach, didn't pursue, just watched, waited, positioned itself perfectly to observe without being observed. "Stalking behavior often involves a surveillance phase," Reeves explained. "The subject studies their target's routines, patterns, vulnerabilities. They're building towards something, but that something might not have happened yet. Or," she paused, "it might have happened in a way we haven't discovered." "You think someone was attacked?" Jada said. It wasn't a question. "I think we need to check missing person reports for Richmond and surrounding areas. Anyone connected to this hospital, staff, patients, visitors, and I need to interview the other people who appear in this footage. Patricia Gonzalez, Dr. Williams, and James Porter, the janitor. See if any of them noticed anything unusual or felt threatened." Doug pulled up employee records on his tablet. "I can get you their contact information." The meeting continued for another hour. Reeves methodical in her questioning, building a timeline of events, creating lists of action items. She'd station an unmarked patrol car near the parking garage overnight for the next week. She'd have a forensics team examine the stairwell area for fingerprints or DNA evidence. She'd request traffic camera footage from surrounding streets to identify vehicles entering and leaving the garage during the relevant time periods. But, as comprehensive as the investigation sounded, Jada could hear the subtext in Reeves's voice. The detective was going through the motions, thorough, professional, but without real hope of identifying the shadow. The evidence was too thin, too ambiguous. Unless something more concrete emerged, this would become one of those cases that generated a file folder and a sense of unease, but no resolution. As the meeting broke up, Reeves pulled Jada aside. "I need you to be careful. Vary your schedule if possible. Park in different sections. Don't walk to your car alone if you can avoid it. I'm not trying to frighten you, but if someone has been watching..." "They know my pattern," Jada finished. "They know when I work, where I park, what time I leave." "Exactly. So change that pattern. Make yourself unpredictable." That night, Jada called in sick for her shift. She sat in her apartment with the lights on and the door double locked, scrolling through local news on her phone. Nothing about County General. Nothing about surveillance footage or mysterious figures. The story was contained. Hospital administration didn't want panic. Police didn't want to compromise the investigation. But something else caught her attention. A headline from 2 weeks earlier. "Missing woman last seen near downtown Richmond." Jada clicked through. The article described Tasha Brooks, 27, who disappeared after leaving her job at a restaurant 4 blocks from County General, last seen walking toward a parking garage. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, no leads. The article included a photo. Tasha Brooks was a young black woman, similar age to Jada, similar build, similar path through downtown Richmond at night. Jada's hands trembled as she forwarded the article to Detective Reeves with a simple message. "Is this connected?" The response came 20 minutes later. looking into it. The connection to Tasha Brooks changed everything. By Saturday morning, Detective Reeves had expanded her investigation beyond County General. Tasha had worked as a server at the Commonwealth, an upscale restaurant that stayed open until midnight on weekends. She'd been seen leaving work at 11:47 p.m. on November 4th, exactly 2 weeks before the surveillance footage captured the shadow watching Jada. The parking garage where Tasha had left her car was 3 blocks from County General. Different structure, different security company, but similar layout. Multi-level, open sides, fluorescent lighting, concrete, and shadows. Reeves pulled the security footage from Tasha's garage. The cameras there were older, lower resolution, covering even fewer angles than County General's system. But they showed Tasha walking toward her car on the second level at 11:52 p.m. She got into her vehicle, started the engine, and then nothing. The car remained parked, engine running, for 6 minutes before the footage showed Tasha getting back out. She stood beside her open driver's door looking toward something off-camera. Her body language registered uncertainty, maybe confusion. She took a few steps away from her car, moving toward the passenger side. Then she walked completely out of frame. She never came back. Her car was found the next morning, still parked, door open, engine dead from running all night. Her purse was inside, her phone, her keys in the ignition. Security footage showed no one else entering or leaving the garage during the relevant time period. Tasha Brooks had simply vanished. "Look at this," Reeves said, pulling up the footage on her laptop. Jada sat in the detective's office at Richmond PD headquarters, along with Jerome and a detective from the original missing person case, Detective Marcus Green, who'd been investigating Tasha's disappearance for 2 weeks without leads. Green had been changed to Detective Miller in the reports to avoid that name as well. A broad-shouldered man in his 50s who looked like he hadn't slept properly since Tasha went missing. He pointed at the screen. "We've analyzed this footage frame by frame, enhanced it every way possible. We cannot figure out what made her get out of her car and walk into an area with no camera coverage. Unless," Reeves said, "someone lured her, someone who knew exactly where the cameras were and weren't." Jerome studied the footage. The blind spots. Both garages have them. Stairwells, corners, certain angles where the mounting positions create gaps in coverage. "You think the same person took Tasha?" Jada asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think," Reeves said carefully, "we need to consider that possibility. 2 parking garages within walking distance, both with predictable camera blind spots, both frequented by young women leaving work late at night. And in at least one case, yours, Jada, evidence of someone watching, learning patterns." Miller pulled up a map on a tablet. "I've marked every parking garage within a 10-block radius of downtown Richmond. 13 structures total. Most of them serve office buildings, apartments, hospitals, high turnover of vehicles, lots of people coming and going at all hours." He placed red pins on 5 locations. "These 5 have reported unusual incidents in the past 6 months. Not necessarily missing persons, mostly reports of women feeling followed, seeing someone in stairwells who shouldn't be there, finding car doors unlocked they remember locking. Nothing criminal enough to warrant serious investigation, but a pattern of discomfort." Jada stared at the map. "You're saying there's someone systematically using these garages as hunting grounds?" "I'm saying we have data that suggests someone understands these spaces intimately, knows the security systems, the camera coverage, the flow of traffic. They're not random. They're studied." Reeves opened another file on her computer. "I've requested footage from all 5 locations for the past 3 months. We're looking for that same shadow, someone positioned at the edge of camera frames, watching without being fully visible. It's going to take days to review everything, but if we can establish a pattern, we might be able to predict where they'll show up next." "Or catch them," Jerome added. "Or that," Reeves agreed. The investigation expanded rapidly. By Sunday, a task force had been assembled. 6 detectives, 2 forensic analysts, and a behavioral specialist from the FBI's local field office. The specialist, Dr. Karen Chen, later renamed Dr. Hayes in reports, provided a profile based on the limited evidence, likely male, mid-20s to early 40s, familiarity with security systems suggesting possible background in law enforcement or private security, organized and patient, escalating from surveillance to action. The watching phase can last months, Dr. Hayes explained during a briefing Jada was allowed to attend. They're building confidence, perfecting their technique, but there's always a trigger that moves them from observation to action, something that makes them feel ready or desperate or excited enough to take the risk. What's the trigger? Jada asked. Often it's environmental, a change in their personal life, job loss, relationship ending, some stressor that pushes them over the edge, or it's opportunity-based. The perfect victim at the perfect time in the perfect location with no witnesses. Jada thought about Tuesday morning, walking alone through that garage at dawn, the shadow watching. If she had parked in a different spot, if the camera angle had been slightly different, if she hadn't felt that instinctive warning, would she have become another Tasha Brooks? Another face on a missing person poster? The forensic team found something in the county general stairwell. On the concrete floor, in the corner where the shadow had been positioned, they discovered fibers, synthetic material, black, consistent with tactical or outdoor clothing. Analysis would take weeks, but it proved something physical had been there. Someone real had stood in that spot, watching. They also found scuff marks on the wall, subtle scratches in the paint suggesting someone had leaned there repeatedly, worn a groove through casual patient observation. Weeks, the lead forensic tech said. Maybe months. This wasn't one time. This was habitual. By Monday evening, the footage review had produced results. The same shadow, or a shadow with identical positioning characteristics, appeared in footage from 3 other parking garages, always at the edge of frames. Always during late night or early morning hours, always when a lone woman walked through the monitored area. The dates went back 4 months, September, October, November, an escalating pattern of surveillance across multiple locations, and in each case, the shadow appeared most frequently in the weeks before Tasha Brooks disappeared. He was practicing, Miller said, his voice heavy with the weight of the evidence, learning the systems, perfecting his positioning, building up to an abduction. And Tasha was the first one he actually took, Reeves added, which means he's going to do it again, Jada finished. The room fell silent. The trap was set on November 24th, 2014. Detective Reeves coordinated with security teams across all 13 parking garages in the target area. Additional cameras were installed in previous blind spots, small wireless units that could be monitored remotely. Undercover officers posed as hospital staff, restaurant workers, office employees leaving late shifts. Every woman who matched the victim profile was quietly warned, offered escorts to vehicles, given direct lines to patrol units stationed nearby. Jada returned to work, but not alone. Keisha accompanied her for every shift, waiting in the hospital lobby, walking with her to the parking garage when the shift ended. The shadow hadn't appeared in the county general footage since that Tuesday morning, as if whoever had been watching knew they'd been noticed. But the other garages showed different patterns. The shadow appeared twice more in locations that hadn't been secured yet, always watching, never approaching. The behavioral profile suggested patience. This person wouldn't be rushed, wouldn't take unnecessary risks, unless something changed their pattern. On December the 2nd, 18 days after Jada had felt watched in that garage, the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A traffic camera 3 blocks from where Tasha Brooks disappeared captured footage of a vehicle circling the block repeatedly on the night she vanished. The car, a dark blue Ford sedan, maybe 10 years old, passed the same intersection 6 times between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. Running the partial plate visible in the footage led to a name, Kyle Brennan, 32, former security contractor for a company that had installed systems in 8 of the 13 garages under investigation. He'd been let go from the company in August for unauthorized access to client databases. Brennan lived in an apartment on the north side of Richmond. When police executed a search warrant on December 4th, they found a laptop containing hundreds of video files, security footage from multiple parking garages, edited and compiled, focused on specific individuals, women, leaving work alone, walking to their cars isolated. One folder was labeled November. Inside were video files of Jada, of Patricia Gonzalez, of 3 other county general employees, timestamps, notes about schedules, close-up screenshots of license plates and parking patterns. Another folder was labeled Tasha. It contained 37 video files spanning 3 weeks. The last file was dated November 4th, the night she disappeared. Kyle Brennan was arrested at his workplace. Ironically, another security company that hadn't checked his references thoroughly. He maintained his innocence initially, claiming the videos were research for a documentary about urban safety. But faced with the forensic evidence linking him to the stairwell at County General, the fibers matching his jacket, and testimony from women who'd reported feeling watched in the exact locations where his surveillance footage focused, his story collapsed. He'd been using his knowledge of security systems to identify blind spots to position himself where he could watch without being recorded clearly. He'd been studying women for months, learning their routines, their vulnerabilities. Tasha Brooks, according to what he eventually told investigators, had noticed him in the garage that night. She'd gotten out of her car to confront him, to ask why he was standing in the stairwell. He'd panicked, and in panicking, he'd crossed the line from observer to perpetrator. Tasha's body was found on December 8th, buried in a wooded area 40 miles outside Richmond. The autopsy confirmed what investigators had feared. She died within hours of her disappearance. Her family got closure, but no comfort. Another young life ended by someone who'd convinced himself that watching wasn't hurting, that surveillance wasn't a crime, that he could control where his obsessions led. Kyle Brennan was convicted in 2016 of murder, kidnapping, and stalking. Multiple victims testified about the fear his surveillance had caused, the sense of violation from being watched without knowledge or consent. He received life without parole. Jada attended the trial. She sat in the courtroom and watched Brennan, a ordinary-looking man, unremarkable in every way, get led away in handcuffs. She thought about how close she'd come to being more than just a folder on his laptop, how that moment of instinct, that feeling of being watched, had potentially saved her life. The parking garage at County General installed new cameras in early 2015. The blind spots were eliminated. Additional lighting went up. Security protocols were revised, with mandatory escorts available for all night shift staff. Jerome retired, but stayed in touch with Jada, checking in occasionally to make sure she was all right. Jada still works at County General, still takes night shifts, still parks on the 3rd floor, though now in Section C instead of B. She carries pepper spray on her keychain and a personal alarm that connects directly to hospital security. But more than the physical precautions, she carries the knowledge that saved her, the understanding that our instincts exist for a reason, that the feeling of being watched shouldn't be dismissed as paranoia. Because sometimes the things we sense in empty spaces are real. Sometimes the shadows at the edge of our vision contain something watching back. And sometimes the only difference between being a name in a police report and being a folder on a predator's computer is the willingness to trust that quiet voice saying, "Something's wrong here, pay attention, don't ignore what your body knows." The footage still exists in evidence files, that grainy video of a shadow at the edge of the frame, positioned perfectly to watch without being seen. It's been analyzed by security professionals, used in training seminars about surveillance and safety, discussed in criminal psychology courses about stalking behavior. But for Jada, it's simpler than all that analysis and theory. It's a reminder that parking garages at dawn exist in a vulnerable space, that predators study the gaps in our awareness, and that the price of safety is constant vigilance, Not paranoia, but awareness. Trusting yourself enough to say, I feel watched. I feel unsafe. I need to change my pattern, call for help, refuse to be alone. The shadow in that footage represented Kyle Brennan's mistake. The moment his perfect surveillance system failed him. The moment he appeared where he thought he was invisible. But it also represents something else. Proof that the feeling of being watched isn't always imagination. That our subconscious registers threats our conscious mind might dismiss. Jada walks through parking garages differently now. We all should. With awareness. With caution. With the understanding that safety isn't guaranteed by cameras and lights alone. It's maintained by trusting our instincts and refusing to be easy targets. The question isn't whether predators exist. They do. The question is whether we'll pay attention to the signs, the shadows at the edges, the feeling of eyes on our backs in supposedly empty spaces, whether we'll trust ourselves enough to say, something's wrong, whether we'll act on that knowledge before it's too late. Tasha Brooks didn't get that chance. Jada did. The difference between them was measured in seconds. The time it took for instinct to register, for awareness to surface, for a young woman to stop walking and scan the shadows. That's all it takes sometimes. A moment of attention, a willingness to trust what we feel, even when we can't prove it. The shadow is still there in that footage, archived in evidence, a frozen moment of surveillance that almost became something worse. It serves as a reminder. Pay attention. Trust yourself. Don't walk alone in empty spaces if you can avoid it. And if you ever feel watched, if that primitive instinct flares, if the air seems to change, if something feels wrong in an underground garage at dawn, don't dismiss it. Because sometimes there really is someone lurking just outside the frame, waiting for you to ignore that warning.